Started. Hey, heyo. Okay, so this is my third attempt at doing this. First one took 40 minutes. Second one took 5 minutes, but then I realized I didn't cover a bunch of the stuff I needed to. That was a few days ago, and I fixed a few things since as well. So round 3. First things first, I did not do one of the things we were supposed to do. I did my own thing. I forgot to tell you, and then it was too late to go back. So I just went with it, and hopefully you will too, and you're okay with that. So without further ado, I'm just gonna jump in. You can see this one here is actually hosted on Heroku right now. Yeah, this is the live version. Let me just go to the home page. Boop. Yeah, there we go. I don't know what that was. I think it just like cached or something. That was weird. This is the home page. So this is Gradient Bucket. The whole gist of the website is it's a site for storing gradients. So you can edit it and do all the shenanigans, and then save it and edit it and view them. You kind of already saw a piece of that, but anyway. We'll dive in. So when I click on my swinging bucket here, which all of this stuff I made and did the animations on the SVG here and all that kind of stuff, when you click on that, whoosh, we get that cool parallaxing transition. Then you can go kind of one of two directions really. You can see it up here in the nav too. You can either go to the new or the view section. The view bucketed gradients will show you kind of all the gradients that are on in the DB right now, whereas create obviously is our creation page, which is where we'll start. Boink. So the actual data shape, the model that I went with was really simple. I wanted to try to spruce it up, and you can see I've added a few kind of whatever fields to this here, like use case and description are obviously more information than you would ever really need to store for just a gradient pattern, but just to flesh out the model a little bit. The colors and direction are actually the sort of sub schema, which you'll see in action in a bit. Again, just kind of to plug everything together and meet the requirements, but you'll see that in action in a minute. So let's give this a name, and we're going to call this super grad. Grad. So the first thing to note is here on this form, I have lots of cool validation happening, so it'll actually check required for all this and give you these cool validation errors. Anything with a star beside it is obviously actually required. In this case, everything is. Especially down here in these two, there's some interesting things going on, so I'll just fill this stuff out and get to that. So super grad is made by Superman. The use case is for saving lives. And the description is you know what, I'm gonna do the thing I always do. This is my go-to. Just drop the first couple of paragraphs of the Iliad. I was gonna try to do something else Superman related just now, but I didn't. I gave up. So here we go. Bam, description. You can see that rescales, and it's a text area that'll just fit in the text. Down here is where the really interesting stuff is happening. So you can see that if I start putting in a hash code, it'll kind of turn it into a little tag here that I can then remove. It's also actually taking a look at that and seeing that it's not a valid hex code. So it's actually validating that, and it's also validating that there's at least two, because obviously a gradient, to be a gradient, needs two colors. So I can start out here and do a, let's do F00 and an F00 F, no, yeah. And then pick a direction for it. Like that, bam. So super grad, it's red and blue. You can see that that automatically shows up and is generating that gradient as I change it. I can add another color to it and it'll do the same. So I could add just like whatever that would be. And there it goes. It adds it onto the end there. And then I could get rid of it and it's gone. Very cool. I hit my create, creates it. Bam, here's my list of all the gradients that people have created. So this is just a grid of cards, obviously. For each of these cards, you can show, and it'll pop up here with a show where these fields are non-editable. And obviously, it's also showing you the colors that are associated with it and the direction that the gradient is going, and all that kind of neat stuff. You can just click outside anywhere, or you can hit the X to close this. Some of the other really cool things on this page itself is that I can actually click on any of these and bam, what's that? Bam, what's that? Well, whenever you click on it, it actually copies to your clipboard a valid linear gradient CSS that you can drop into CSS anywhere and it'll work, which is really super neat. Obviously, of course, we have our edit. So down here, we open that up and there pops up our edit again, and I could call this supergrad 2, and I could change my gradient to be that, and also so it's still live changes. It live changes the background now actually instead, which is awesome. Let's do 272727, the best gray there is. We'll flip it around, we'll update it, bam, and it's updated right then and there. And the last thing, of course, is deletion. So if I go to delete, pops up a little confirmation message. Wherever I hit that is where it, pops up. Are you sure you want to delete this? No, it doesn't delete. Hey, look at that. I successfully didn't delete it. Yes, and it does. And if I refresh this page, it's gone. Cool. And so all of that is on the live version right now. So let's just hop into the code real quick. Oh, let me just sit up. I'm sitting at a weird angle. Okay. So here's my code for this. I sort of did the whole project structure myself, so I didn't use Express Generator. I think I started at one point with a template project, but I ended up changing basically every single thing about it. So really, this is pretty much all just me putting stuff together. The package JSON, there's only one package JSON and everything is inside of it. Not the most efficient way of doing things. Like, I'd like to have actually split this up in retrospect, but it all works quite nicely anyway. You can see that when I was developing, I could run yarn dev and it would run my server and my client simultaneously using concurrently. And then when it actually goes to build on the like on Heroku, it runs its start script and its build script, which actually uses Parcel. Everything here is built with Parcel instead of Webpack, as Create React App things normally are. Anything else significant about the project structure? Yeah, my Babel RC is using some stuff to trim out some things from the design. Oh yeah, I guess something you could see here. I'm using a whole bunch of stuff. I'm not actually using Cowboy. I'm assuming Cowboy is coming in from somewhere in the background, and Erlang must be used in one of the dependencies I have as well. But obviously Express, Node.js, React, Styled Components, and Ant Design are all being used. And this is just setting up some stuff from Ant Design. The Babel RC is all Parcel needs to do its job, which is super cool. Okay, so quickly getting into our server configuration. Again, this is just my own. This is my sort of app.js, my main file for my server. It's got its body parser and everything in here. It's connecting up its Mongoose database. I set up a cross-origin request thing. I don't know if I ended up actually needing that, but it's there. And here is where it actually serves the website. So on the live version, it's building the Yarn web, or it's building the React website and then just serving it through Express here. And yeah, that's pretty standard. And there's our router, which we can hop into now. Bam. Our router is it's exactly what we did in class. Nothing special here. My backend is pretty much straightforward. Everything kind of does what it should do and is exactly what it was in class. We can take a look at that controller right now and see that other than this one test function that I have up here still kicking around, everything is pretty standard. So like we're getting our find from our index and returning our errors and everything. The only real differences is everything is done in ES6 syntax, and update uses the more modern update functionality of Mongoose. Same with delete. Delete just deletes one. I can't remember. We were doing deletes a different way. So yeah, so that's the controller. The model is kind of the more significant thing. Again, it was a very simple schema I went with. So the main components of the schema are just strings that are required. The sub schema connected here has a bit more validation going on. So they have defaults, though they probably shouldn't, actually thinking about it. Direction is validated against an enum that's just looking for left, right, top, bottom, whereas gradient validators actually has the same kind of validation that it has on the front end, where it's checking to see that there's more than 2 colors, and it's testing against a hex code regex to make sure that it's all valid and that every member of the gradient codes array is a valid hex code. It's also making sure that the code isn't undefined and that it is a string. So there you go. So that's pretty much the back end. That's really all there is to it. Obviously, I guess the Mongoose fella here too. Yay! So we'll dive into the client real quick. The client is quite big, so I'm not going to go into all the details because last time I did this took 40 minutes. I'm probably getting close to 10 or 15 at this point. Where's my time? Where is it? Hello? Time? Oh yeah, 12 minutes. Yeah, so I'm not going to get into too many details. I'm routing with React Router. As you can see here, it's wrapped in my thing. In my index, I guess I should say. The styles are coming in from, again, I'm using a design library called Ant Design, which is really, really cool. So this is just importing the CSS for that. Global style is just injecting fonts into my website, so I'm just using some Google fonts. Project structure wise, like I said, I didn't really use Create React App or anything. So what's happening here is all my pages are in pages. Each of these JSX files is associated with one of my pages. I only ended up with having 3 pages because all of my shows and edits are kind of just models that pop up in that list. And my first splash page and my home page are really the same page. They just transition between sort of 2 spots. So in the pages folder is all that. So each JSX file is the page itself, whereas the directory is the styles. This is styled components. If you've never seen styled components in action, this is how it works. It lets you kind of wrap styles around other other React components, and then just use actual CSS plus a bit to make things happen. So like my editor knows this is CSS, which is super, super cool. I think Tex is using it as well because I told him to, because I'm a really big fan of styled components. So it's yeah, I pretty much preach it to everyone. So if you do React stuff, I encourage you to take a look at this because it's awesome. I think I might have just broke something when I saved. Did I? No. Anyway, so that's that. I'm not going to go into all the subtle details of how that works, but it is very cool. Final sort of things of note, I guess, are the forms. So the forms are really cool the way they work in Ant Design. It hands you a lot of stuff to do. So you can see this form is pretty complicated. Every form that shows up on my website is actually the same form that's just morphing based on its use case. So like here in gradient list, my model here contains my form. Then the form has an edit mode and a show mode and all that kind of stuff that it just toggles between. So you can take a look at that here. So basically what it does, if it's not in show mode, then it actually brings up a input that has a field decorator attached. The field decorator defines the name of the data that's going into the input, and it also gives it validation rules. There are some things that have more complicated validation rules, like for example here, that's validating my hex codes, does that same pattern matching that it does on the back end. Then it also, they're usually being provided a initial value if edit mode is true. So if there's an edit mode happening, they have an initial value. If it is an edit mode, it's just create and it just does the validation. And then alternatively, if it's in a show mode, it'll render whatever the sort of appropriate just display control will be. A lot of these are just read-only inputs. Some of them are other things. So that's kind of one of the most complicated pieces of all this, is how all that's working. Anything else fancy worth showing off? Yeah, I guess I can just show real quick on the home page. So the parallaxing animation happens using React Spring. So that's imported up here, React Spring parallax, which is really cool. Basically what it lets you do is you wrap two or many things even in a parallax component, and then you sort of use a ref to create a scroll to. The scroll to gets passed into Splash, which then, as you saw in action here, the on-click scrolls to 1. So you'll notice that everything inside my parallax has an offset attached to it, and the offset just determines basically 0 is get out of here. 0 is page 0 or page 1, and 1 is page 1 or page 2 kind of thing, right? And it just does all the parallaxing between them. It moves them everything at different speeds depending on what I've set and all that kind of cool stuff. So that is pretty much everything. I think it said I was supposed to create 2, but I forgot to create 2, so whoops. But you can create another one yourself if you want. Yeah, that's me.